A woman betrayed in her most vulnerable moment. They mailed me the invitation. Not even a text. Not a call. Not a whisper of decency. A cream-colored envelope with gold embossing, as if elegance could cover betrayal. I remember the way my fingers trembled opening it, thinking maybe it was a baby shower gift or a "just thinking of you" card from a friend. But no. It was a wedding invitation. Tyler James Whitmore was marrying Caitlin Rose Bennett. My best friend. My maid of honor. The woman who rubbed cocoa butter on my growing belly 2 weeks earlier and whispered, "You're glowing. He's lucky to have you." They chose a vineyard. They chose lavender and gold, my exact wedding colors. And they chose to do it 2 days before my due date. I called no one. I made no sound. I just sat on the floor of my apartment, legs folded under my belly, and read it again. And again. And again. My breath felt like it was being squeezed out of a straw. And for the first time in my life, I touched my stomach, and felt shame instead of love. What kind of mother starts her child's life like this? Unwanted. Replaced. Invisible. That was the moment I realized. I loved someone who never thought twice about breaking me. And I want to tell you everything. Not because I need pity. But because no one told me what betrayal feels like when you're too pregnant to even get off the floor without help. No one warned me that your best friend could study your pain like a blueprint, and then build her wedding on top of your ruins. So if this story cuts even a little deep, subscribe. We tell the truths women aren't supposed to say out loud. Because the truth is, I didn't just love Tyler. I built my life around him. I was 22 when I met him. Fresh out of nursing school. Working double shifts at St. Mary's. I still remember the night I met him. I had compression marks on my ankles, a sandwich in my scrubs pocket, and a chart I forgot to sign. But he didn't care. He said, "You look like a woman who takes care of everyone, but who takes care of you?" And like a fool, I let that line become a prophecy. Tyler was charming, not just handsome, but the kind of man who made you feel like you were being seen for the first time. He'd remember my schedule better than I did. He'd surprise me with lemon pound cake after a long shift. He called me darlin', like we were already in some southern love story. And for the first time in my life, I stopped being the responsible one, the fixer, the strong one. I was his. I introduced him to my mom. He built my IKEA furniture. He prayed with me when my uncle passed. He told me he wanted 5 kids, but only if they looked like you. He proposed with a silver ring on a Tuesday night in the parking lot of the grocery store because, in his words, "Why wait when I already know?" I said yes. Of course I said yes. I didn't care that the ring was small. I didn't care that his car made that screeching noise every time it braked. I cared that he looked at me like I was home. And then, life happened. He lost his job. I picked up more shifts. We were behind on rent. I cut off all my hobbies. I gave up my spot in the nurse practitioner program to stay closer to him when he was struggling with panic episodes. He cried in my lap. I held him like a child. I paid the bills. I cooked. I supported. And when the stress got too much for him, and he said he just needed space to figure things out, I moved into my mom's guest room without asking questions. Because I loved him. Because I believed love was loyalty through the storm. Because I thought God was testing me, and I was determined to pass. And then Caitlin came in. I had known her since sophomore year of college. She helped me study for pharmacology. We used to share frozen yogurt on her apartment floor and talk about the men we'd marry one day. She called Tyler brother-in-law before he ever proposed. When I found out I was pregnant, she screamed louder than I did. She bought matching onesies and started planning my baby shower the same day. I never thought to question her. Never thought to wonder why she always lingered after I left the room. Never once considered that her kindness might be a mask. Looking back now, I see it. The moments they exchanged glances when they thought I wasn't looking. The inside jokes I wasn't part of. The way she started dressing a little more like me. Laughing a little too loud at his stories. But I told myself, she's family. She would never. I wasn't his wife. I was his shield, his mother, his mirror, his maid, his excuse. When he cried, I wiped his tears. When he raged, I stayed quiet. When he failed, I clapped louder. I didn't just love him. I emptied myself for him. I carved space in my soul and said, here. Live here. Rent-free. Forever. And he did. Until he didn't. The first time I saw the crack, it was small. Barely noticeable. We were at my 12-week appointment. I had just heard our baby's heartbeat for the first time. I looked over at Tyler expecting joy. Ah. But he just stared at the floor. Said something like, it's early. Let's not get too excited yet. That night, I blamed it on stress. He was probably scared. Overwhelmed. Men process differently, that's what Caitlin said when I cried to her over FaceTime. She told me, don't worry, babe. He's gonna come around. He loves you. I clung to those words like scripture. But then there was the birthday. Mine. He forgot. Didn't even send a text until 4 p.m., and even that said happy birthday with no punctuation. He said he was working late. Said he had a lot on his mind. But then I saw on Caitlin's story that she and a mystery guy had gone to dinner that night. I paused the video and zoomed in. His hand. His watch. Tyler. Still, I let it go. I told myself maybe it was an old clip. Maybe they just ran into each other. Maybe. The phone came next. He used to leave it everywhere. Kitchen counter. Bathroom sink. Nightstand. But then one day, around my 6th month, I noticed he kept it face down. Always. And the password changed. I asked. He smiled. Said, you're being paranoid. Then kissed my forehead and handed me a cookie like I was a child on the verge of a tantrum. The next week, Caitlin came over wearing a hoodie I hadn't seen before. It was gray. With a tiny bleach stain near the wrist. I knew it. Because I used to sleep in it when I missed him. But I said nothing. I just asked if she wanted tea, and forced my hands to stop shaking as I filled the kettle. My sister asked me once, why does he always look annoyed when you talk? I laughed it off. Said, he's just tired. But I knew. I knew the way I stopped being his peace and started becoming his burden. Even my body noticed. I'd cry in the shower, silently, while my swollen belly leaned against the tiled wall. I told myself it was just hormones. That every pregnant woman goes through this. That love has quiet seasons. But the quiet was turning into silence. And the silence felt like a scream I didn't have the strength to answer. I didn't ignore the signs. I just hoped they'd lie to me a little longer. Because once the truth enters your body, it doesn't leave quietly. And deep down, I already knew. I just wasn't ready to bury the version of life I thought I was building. Was already buried. And the invitation was the gravestone. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I didn't call anyone. I just sat there. Pregnant. Alone. A wedding invitation in one hand, and my stomach stretched full of his child in the other. The room was too quiet, like the air itself didn't know what to say. My body felt too heavy to carry. Not just because of the baby, but because I had suddenly become someone I didn't recognize, someone who had spent years loving a man who saw me as disposable. I placed the invitation on the coffee table like it might explode. Then I got up, slowly. Waddled to the sink. And washed my hands. Because I didn't know what else to do. My brain wouldn't compute what my eyes had just read. They were getting married. Not someday. Not behind my back and hidden from view. But in 2 days. The same day my doctor said I'd probably deliver. Caitlin knew that. She was the one who drove me to that appointment. She held my hand when the nurse did the cervical check. She cried when we heard the heartbeat. She timed it. She knew I wouldn't be able to walk, travel, or stand in protest. She knew I'd be confined to a hospital bed or bleeding in a recovery room while she slipped into a white dress and took vows with the man who had left me mid-pregnancy with no goodbye. This wasn't just betrayal. It was erasure. I didn't call her. I didn't call him. Not that day. I was too humiliated to speak. Too nauseous to breathe without tasting salt and iron. I barely remember falling asleep. But I remember waking up at 3:12 a.m. and sitting up like I had been shot. I stared at the invitation again, still lying there, untouched, quiet, like it hadn't set fire to everything I thought was real. That's when I called him. My hand shook. My voice cracked. He answered on the second ring. No hello. Just, yeah? Like I was someone selling something. I said, tell me it's not real. Silence. Then. I didn't know how to tell you. I almost dropped the phone. That was his answer. That was the weight of everything I carried, turned into a shrug. Not I'm sorry. Not it was a mistake. Not even let's talk. Just. I didn't know how to tell you. Like I was a problem he didn't want to solve. Like he had just outgrown me mid-pregnancy. I whispered, you timed it. You knew. He didn't respond. I said, she was in the group chat. She knew my due date. You both did. And he hung up. He hung up. That's when the nausea turned to something deeper, grief, maybe. Or shame. Or rage too tired to fight back. I didn't call back. I didn't text her. Not right away. I just sat there. Again. Like I had that morning. Back where I started. But now with proof that I wasn't crazy. That my worst fear had been printed, stamped, and mailed straight to my door. They didn't forget me. They calculated around me. They planned their forever inside the window of my labor. They said their vows while I counted contractions. They toasted champagne while I fought through back pain and lower pelvic pressure and one too many panic attacks. You don't just lose the man. You lose the dream, the years, the self you gave away. And what they stole from me wasn't just a relationship. It was witnessing. He was supposed to witness our son's first breath. To hold my hand. To tell me I did good. To say, we made him. Instead, he was somewhere else. Wearing a tuxedo. Promising forever to the woman who once held my hair back while I threw up in the first trimester. I didn't matter. The baby didn't matter. Only their story did. And they wanted to write it like I was never part of the plot. But I was. I was the beginning, the middle, and every chapter they stole their dialogue from. I was the woman who carried his child when he said he needed space. The one who paid the bills while he said he was finding himself. The one who let her best friend sleep on the couch after a breakup, never knowing she was rehearsing to become me. And yet somehow, I was the one left behind. Not just physically. But in the way you feel someone's absence echo louder than their presence ever did. There were days I didn't speak. Not because I had nothing to say, but because there was no one left to hear it. Everyone who once saw me with him now saw me as something sad and fragile. They tilted their heads when they looked at me, like pity had replaced respect. Even the nurses at my follow-up appointments said things like, "You're doing great, Mama. You're so strong." But they didn't know I cried while feeding my son at night. Not sobs. Not loud. Just tears. The kind that slide down without warning. The kind that don't need permission. Postpartum hit hard. But not in the way they describe in leaflets or YouTube videos. Mine came wrapped in silence. In watching the door and knowing no one was coming. In hearing my baby cry and wondering if he felt it, the absence, the loss, the betrayal that bled straight through the umbilical cord. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, checking if he was breathing, because the fear of losing one more thing felt unbearable. I slept with the TV on just to fill the silence. Not even with shows I liked, just noise. Anything but my own thoughts. Tyler never asked how the birth went. Never sent flowers. Never asked for photos. But his mother sent a text. Congratulations. Praying for peace and healing. I stared at it for so long the screen went dim. Peace and healing? From the same woman who probably picked Caitlin's dress with her? Who likely handed her the family pearls while I lay with stitches and cracked nipples and a heart ripped open in places no one could see? Friends disappeared too. Not all. But the ones that mattered. Some didn't know what to say. Some didn't want to choose sides. And a few. I think they knew the truth long before I did. You start to question everything in moments like that. Your memory. Your worth. Your entire reality. Was I blind? Was I too much? Was I not enough? Even my own reflection became a stranger. I didn't recognize my face without the joy I used to carry when I believed I was loved. I remember one night sitting on the edge of my bed, my baby finally asleep in the bassinet beside me. And I whispered, "Did I deserve this?" I didn't mean it like a victim. I meant it like a woman who gave everything she had, and got burned for holding the match too long. I found myself texting him once. I stared at the typing box for almost an hour. All I wrote was, "He looks like you." He didn't reply. Just left me on read. And somehow, that hurt more than the wedding invite. Because I didn't want him back. But I did want acknowledgement. I wanted proof that this wasn't all a hallucination. That we existed. That I wasn't just some detour on his road to true love. But all I got was silence. He moved on. But I stayed. I stayed in the wreckage he left behind. I lived in that wreckage. I breastfed through it. I bled through it. I smiled for baby photos through it. I learned to laugh again. Not because I felt joy, but because I didn't want my son's earliest memories to smell like sorrow. And even now, some days I still expect the door to open. Still expect to hear keys jingling and a voice saying, "Hey babe, I'm home." But the only man coming home now is the one I'm raising to be nothing like his father. I was changing a diaper when it happened. The TV was on in the background, muted. Some wedding show. I wasn't paying attention. I was humming something soft to calm him down because he had colic that day and I hadn't slept in almost 2 nights. And then I saw it. Her face. Caitlin. Hair curled, makeup perfect, hand held out toward the camera. A ring. My ring. The diamond wasn't hers. It was the one Tyler had proposed to me with, in the Target parking lot, under flickering lights, with a sweaty palm and eyes that swore forever. The same ring I gave back when he said he needed time to think. And now it was hers. Not just the ring. The caption too. Mrs. Whitmore, forever we've waited for this day. We've waited. Like I was just a bookmark in their love story. And there it was. The final sting. Not just that they married. Not just that she took my life and wore it like a costume. But that they acted like I never existed. No mention. No trace. Photos wiped. Comments filtered. Mutual friends pretending their timelines didn't overlap with mine. Even my son, their shared blood, wasn't acknowledged. Not even a cryptic quote. Not even a guilty, "We wish her well." It was like they were trying to erase me clean. Rewrite history. Pretend the story began in her lap, not mine. And maybe they did succeed, in their circles. Maybe they sleep just fine. Maybe they tell people I was a crazy ex, or a mistake they had to learn from. But I know the truth. And so does the child sleeping 2 feet away from me. That's when I stopped loving him, and started loving my peace. Not loudly. Not for revenge. Just quietly. The kind of peace that doesn't beg to be seen. The kind that returns to you one piece at a time, in a late-night laugh, in a morning without tears, in the moment you realize you didn't think about him all day, and you felt okay. He chose her. And in choosing her, he gave me something far more valuable than closure. Freedom. Not the kind they write about in poems. Not the movie montage kind with a makeover and a new man and an inspirational playlist. No. My freedom came quietly. Almost so gently I didn't recognize it at first. It came in moments. Small, breath-sized ones. Like the day I deleted his number. Not in anger, but because I realized I hadn't called it in weeks. And more importantly, I didn't want to. It came when I stopped stalking her profile. When I stopped checking who liked their photos. When I stopped imagining conversations that would never happen, the perfect clapbacks, the poetic revenge. I just let it all go. I remember waking up one morning, sun pouring through the curtain cracks, and my son smiling at me before I even said a word. I picked him up, kissed the soft patch behind his ear, and whispered, "We're gonna be okay." That was the first time I believed myself. I started journaling again. Not about them. About me. What I liked. What I wanted to remember. What I wanted to feel again without apology. I wrote down every lie I told myself just to stay. Then I tore the pages out and lit them in the kitchen sink. Not because I hated myself. But because I was finally done carrying the weight of a story that was never mine to fix. I didn't post revenge quotes. I didn't air out receipts. I didn't gather sympathy in exchange for outrage. I got real quiet. And then I got real clear. I changed the locks. I stopped explaining myself. I started choosing peace, even when it felt unfamiliar, even when silence felt scarier than pain. There were setbacks. Nights I still dreamed of his voice. Days I resented myself for not seeing it sooner. Times I saw a father and a toddler walking in the park and had to sit down because the ache hit that hard. Healing wasn't a straight line. But it was mine. I went back to therapy. I stopped flinching when people asked if I was married. I stopped saying it's complicated when they asked if my son's father was in his life. I just said, no. It's just us. And every time I said it, it felt less like a scar, and more like a badge. Because we're not broken. We're free. I don't need Tyler's apology. I don't need Caitlin's explanation. I don't need to be tagged in some retrospective caption years from now where they say, "We didn't mean to hurt her." I needed me. And slowly, piece by piece, I returned to her. She was buried under disappointment. Crushed by loyalty. Silenced by fear. But she survived. And when I heard her voice again, quiet, steady, mine, I cried like I hadn't in months. And maybe, just maybe, one day, I'll love again. Not from emptiness. Not to prove something. Not to heal what he broke. But because I have something to give, and it's not desperation. It's not fear. It's not apology. It's me. I didn't move on. I rose up. And now, every time I hold my son and feel his heartbeat against mine, I realize I didn't just survive. I rebuilt. And rebuilding teaches you things survival never will. Because when the dust settles and the crying stops, you finally hear your own voice again. And it says things you wish someone had told you sooner. Like, love should never ask you to disappear. If it does, it's not love. It's power wearing perfume. Silence is not strength when it swallows your truth. I used to think being quiet was noble. That keeping the peace meant I was mature, patient, spiritual even. But sometimes silence is just self-abandonment with lipstick on. If someone makes you feel like home but treats you like a motel. Temporary, replaceable, convenient. Walk. And don't wait for your legs to be strong. Crawl if you have to. You are not crazy. You are not overthinking. You are not dramatic. You were just finally seeing the truth they tried to make you ignore. I know now that I didn't lose a man. I lost a mirror. A warped one. One that reflected my fears and not my light. And thank God I did, because it forced me to go find a clearer one. Now, I measure love by peace. By gentleness. By how safe I feel sitting in silence next to someone who doesn't need to dominate it. I know that being alone isn't a punishment. It's a preservation of dignity. I know that betrayal doesn't define your story. How you rise after it does. And maybe most of all, he didn't break me. He just showed me where I was already cracked. And now? Now those cracks let light in. Now those broken parts are the strongest ones in me. I'm not healed. I'm healing. And that's more than I ever thought I'd say. And if you're listening to this, if your hands are shaking, if your heart is still bruised from loving someone who never loved you back the way you deserved, then I want to say something to you that nobody said to me. You are not alone in this silence. You're not the only one who sat with a phone in your hand, staring at a name that once meant everything, and watching it ring to voicemail. You're not crazy for missing him. You're not weak for wanting answers. And you're definitely not foolish for loving with your whole heart. But you are brave. Braver than you realize, for surviving him. There's life after betrayal. There's joy after numbness. There's laughter after the storm. And not the fake kind you force for company, but the kind that bubbles out of you one day when you realize you made it. So if this is your story too, if you've ever loved and been discarded, trusted and been betrayed, waited and been replaced, write "I'm still here" in the comments. Say it out loud. Whisper it if you have to. Because your voice matters. Your pain is valid. And your healing? It's not just possible. It's already begun.